Okay, good morning class. Today we are going to learn about the differentiation between flexible and rigid pavement. So let us see what is given in it. So in this table, if you can see, there is one flexible pavement and another is rigid pavement. So there is a question asked in the university examination regarding flexible and rigid pavement. So some 7 to 8 points you have to write down with respect to the sketch given there. If there is of 6 marks, then near about 6 to 7 points you have to write down. If there are 7 points, then near about 8 to 9 points you should write down. So here first point of differentiation is flexible pavement consists of series of layers with the highest quality of materials at or near the surface. So it means that there are 4 number of layers in flexible pavement with respect to the highest material, that is by the weight or by at the bottom near your surface layer, which is subgrade. Rigid pavement, it consists of one course of Portland cement concrete slab. So the very first layer, which is known as your surface course or wearing course, that is made up of Portland cement concrete slab. Second, you have to draw the diagram clearly showing the 4 layers of flexible pavement and 3 layers of rigid pavement. Next, it is subjected to deformation of subgrade and subsequent layers on the surface. So whenever they are subjected to the deformation, the subgrade layers with respect to the subsequent layer should be considered. It resists localized failures and areas of inadequate support. If there is no support to the bases over layer by layer, then it may fail. Its stability depends upon aggregate, interlock, particle and cohesion. Of course, if they are not interconnected with each other layer by layer, they are going to collapse or there may be failure in the pavement. Next is its structural stability depends upon the slab itself by the help of beam action. The Portland cement concrete slab at the surface course is made up of 2 types of rods, dowel bars and transfer bars. We are going to study next whenever we are going to design dowel and transverse bars. So this depends on that particular slab and the beam which are placed in between that. Next, if you can see, it has much higher cost of maintenance and repairs. Yes, of course, as flexible pavement is made up of tar road, then it requires many times repairs because of the undulations of the road. And it has relatively less maintenance cost as rigid pavement is having, you know that it is made up of concrete slabs, so less maintenance cost is there. The service life is up to 10 to 15 years of flexible pavement and service life is near about 20 to 40 years for the concrete pavements, rigid pavements. Load distribution is through the component layers. It means layer by layer the load distribution is done in flexible pavement. It distributes load over a wide area of subgrade because of its rigidity and high modulus of elasticity. It is having both modulus of elasticity and modulus of rigidity since it is made up of concrete. The wheel loads are transferred by slab action to a wider area below. The critical stresses for rigid pavement design are maximum flexible stress within the slab due to load and temperature changes. As there are temperatures changing from season to season, there may be temperature stresses. With respect to that, you have to calculate or design the rigid pavement. Next, differentiation may be asked between highway pavement and airfield pavement. The highway pavements that carry high volumes of heavy traffic always result in pumping distress if built directly on the clay subgrades. See, what does it mean that if the heavy traffic is going on the highway pavements and which are built on the clay soils such as black cotton soils, then the subgrade will try to settle down and there will be stresses develop which will be having very undulations in the pavements. In airfield pavements which are built directly over the plastic soil shows little or no pumping. Pumping means up and down undulations. Plastic soils which are settled down and it will not have any type of undulations in the pavement. Second, the design load for a major highway is ordinarily in the vicinity of 9,000 pounds on dual tires, and the expected repetition may be such as 1,000 to 2,000 trucks per day. 9,000 pounds means the design load is that load which is calculated for near about 1,000 to 2,000 trucks per day, and it should have maximum load of 9,000 pounds on dual tiers, means two tires. In contrast, a heavy airplane may have wheel loads in excess of 1 lakh pounds, but only 20,000 to 40,000 coverages may be considered for the life of pavement. As the airplane is very huge and has the tons of loading and have the stresses developed which covers 20 to 40,000 itself. Third, tire pressure for conventional truck tires pressures are the vicinity of 60 to 90 psi, whereas in airfield pavement, tire pressure on jet aircraft may be as high as 400 psi. PSI means pounds per square inch. You can see that from 60 to 90 airfield near about goes to 400, huge PSI. Fourth, it is used for rural and urban roads, project roads, service roads, parking space and space for pedestrian. And in airfield, it is used for runways, taxiways, aprons, helipad and heliport. 5. Lateral placement of traffic on highways is such that nearly all truck traffic travels within 3 to 4 feet of the pavement edge. In contrast, traffic on an airfield is such that the distribution of traffic is concentrated primarily in the center. 6. Traffic concentration is nearer to the edge of the pavement and traffic concentration along the central strip. So here edge, center and corner are the three parts. So highway are more prominent to the nearer to the edge, whereas airplanes are on the center strip of the pavement. 7. Thickness of the pavement is 15 to 75 centimeter for flexible pavement and 10 to 25 centimeter for rigid pavement. Thickness of the pavement is 50 to 110 centimeter for flexible pavement and 25 to 45 centimeter for rigid pavement. So both are having the different thicknesses for different pavements. With respect to the design load calculated, drainage system is moderate to good. and here drainage system is excellent. Next topic is tire and contact pressure. Three terms used in tire pressures are tire pressure, inflation pressure, and contact pressure. Tire pressure and inflation pressure mean exactly same, while contact pressure is defined as the wheel load per unit contact area. Effect of tire walls is neglected. The contact pressure and tire pressure must be same. The contact pressure is found to be more than tire pressure when the tire pressure is less than 7 kg per centimeter square. The ratio of the ratio of contact pressure to the tire pressure is defined as rigidity factor. So dear students, if you can see that tire inflammation and contact, there are three pressures in which contact pressure is more prominent. So there are two cases. If the tire pressure is less than 7 kg per centimeter square, what will be the conditions? And if the tire pressure is greater than 7 kg per centimeter square, what will be the conditions? So these two cases you have to take care of, and that particular contact pressure with respect to tire pressure is called as rigidity factor, which is denoted by small r. So this small r, if greater than 1 for tire pressure less than 7 kg per centimeter square, and if r is less than 1 for tire pressure greater than 7 kg per centimeter square. So these are the conditions. So if you can see this figure, vertical stress distribution. So if you are having the tire pressure vertical stress 7, this is the curve, and maximum to 14, this is the curve, and these are the depths. So whatever tire pressures you are getting from this curve, you can calculate the depth of your flexible or rigid pavement. So the figure 5 shows that tire pressure is more prominent in the upper layers. At the greater depth, the effect of tire pressure diminishes and the total load exhibits a considerable influence on the vertical stress magnitude. So higher tire pressures therefore demands higher quality material at upper layers. Tire pressures does not govern the total depth. In fact, total load governs the stress on the top of the subgrade. So stress is what we have to calculate with respect to the tire pressure, which may be 7, less than 7, or greater than 7. So these two cases we have to consider and we have to design with respect to this. So next is the stresses on the pavement surface under the steel tired wheels of bullock carts are very high. Hence very strong and hard aggregates are required for wearing surface of the pavement. However, the stresses at the lower layers are negligible since the gross load is very small. Whether they are having the steel tires or any type of tires of the bullock cart, the stresses are very high. But what happens when we calculate the total load, then it becomes very negligible or small. Next topic is ESWL, which is known as equivalent single wheel load. This topic is most important and we have to draw a graph on semi-log as well as log graph paper, dear students. And there are two cases for tire pressure less than 7 kg per centimeter square, numericals on that. Second condition is when tire pressure greater than 7 kg per centimeter square, numericals on this, less than 7 and greater than 7. There are two numericals. These are two types. Again, in this there are again two types. If the tire pressure is less than 7 and dual wheels, only two wheels are there, how you will solve the problem by ESWL? And if the tire pressure is greater than 7 and dual in tandem, that means four wheels, what will be the conditions? So numericals on ESWL are having four types, and from four types you are going to design the loads. So let us see what does it mean. Equivalent single wheel load is defined as the load on a single tire or a single wheel that will cause an equal magnitude, and that's where the equivalence is coming to picture of a pre-selected parameter. Equivalence in terms of a pre-selected parameter, either stress, strain, deflection or some other distress at a given location within a specified pavement system, to that resulting from a multiple wheel load at the same location within the same pavement system. So it means whenever we are calculating the loading with respect to the single equivalent single wheel load, means there are n number of tires and we are considering the resultant force. We have, you students, you have done the numericals on engineering mechanics calculating the resultant force. When there are lot many loads, you are converting into one resultant load which is R. So that is what we have to consider here also. So let us see how you can calculate this. If you can see this diagram, if there are two wheels, you are converting into one wheel load, and if there are four wheels, again you are converting into again one single wheel load. So that's why it is called as equivalent single wheel load. This is to reduce the wheel loads under increasing gross loads. The number of wheels of vehicles is increased. This is achieved by providing dual wheel assembly to rear axle of the road vehicles. The wheels may be dual, the wheels may be four wheels also, which are known as dual in tandem. Under dual or multiple wheels, the effective load is not equal to the sum of total wheel loads, since interference or overlapping of the stresses occur. As you know that two-wheelers or four-wheelers or more than four wheels, the loading considered is not with respect to the total loading, because there is lot of disturbances, undulations, overlapping, lot many stresses and stresses develop while the multiple wheels running on the pavement. The effective stresses are always less than the sum of the total stresses due to each wheel. For the purpose of design, the multiple wheel loads or tandem axles are converted into an equivalent single wheel load. So it says that whenever there are more than one wheel, two wheel, so two wheels we consider maximum, minimum dual wheels, more than two wheels, multiple wheels. If there are dual in tandem, since it is tandem written here, tandem axles means another two wheels. So all these loading of wheels are to be converted into one single load, which is known as equivalent single wheel load. See the diagram of stress overlap due to the dual wheels. If there are two wheels here, if you can see in this diagram PD, these are the loadings of these two wheels. clear distance is D and center to center distance is SD. From this, the stresses are developed diagonally to the subgrade here at the bottom, and when they overlap here, that is the maximum stresses, which is D by 2, and from top of bottom of the wheel to the subgrade it is twice SD, means twice the center to center distance between the two wheel loads. So consider the dual wheel system. SD is the center to center spacing of the wheels. D is the clear gap between two wheels. A is the area of circular contact area of tire. So from the figure 7, as we have seen, that some simplification about the load distribution through this pavement stress distribution to the pavement at the depth of D by 2. These two envelopes just start getting overlapped. The stress envelopes produced by the two individual wheel loads, they just start getting overlapped. See here, when these two wheels are having the stresses going diagonally, they overlap each other here at D by 2, and this is known as the overlapping stress. Next is, and then at a significantly larger depth, which is approximately equal to 2SD, the suffix D is normally used because we normally refer to dual wheel sets and its conversion into equivalent single wheel load, but that's not exactly required. So at the depth of 2SD or beyond, the overlap is of such significant magnitude to such an extent it can consider the stress produced at any given location within this overlap zone will be equal to the stress that is produced by PD where the left side and right side wheel are combined together. So here you can see clearly this is 2S from the bottom of your two wheels. This is 2S and overlapping stress is D by 2, and this is PD, wheel load of these two wheels given here. So if you draw a semi-log graph paper like this, you have to draw. So this type of curve you will get, and from here you can calculate the total depth, thickness, and you will get the approximate loading for PDP and twice PD. So for this you have to draw a graph on a semi-log or a log-log graph paper, and then you will get 2 points. This is A and this is B, and in between that thickness, suppose you are given 100 mm. So from that 100 mm you are going to take the thickness. Suppose this is 100 mm. So project on this line which you have drawn A to B, and thus projected on the loading scale of ESWL, and this will give you the loading. So this is how you are going to draw. Next is your load repetition method. The influence of traffic on pavement not only depends on the magnitude of the wheel load but also the frequency of the load applications. Each load application causes some deformation, and the total deformation is the summation of all these. Although the pavement deformation due to the single axle load is very small, the cumulative effect of number of load repetition is significant. Therefore, modern design is based on the total number of standard axle load, usually 80 kilonewton single axle. Since you can see there are n numbers of wheel loads acting on the pavement, many times they are repeated, and therefore summation is calculated and total load fatigue is calculated here. So it has been defined that many times when the load is repeated, then one standard load has been prescribed near about of standard axle load, which is 80 kilonewton. Keep this in mind, dear students. In this numerical of load repetitions, if the standard axle load is not given, then you have to assume 80 kilonewton. That may be 8000 Newton. Okay. If it is given, well and good, but if it is not given, then you have to assume since it is given by IRC. The repetition application of loads to the pavement may result in cumulative permanent deformation to cause failure. Although deformation for a single load application may be small, this may be as a result of accumulated deformation of subgrade due to fatigue in paving material due to bore. So because of all this, cumulative deformation will cause a very bad failure, and for this you have to calculate the total fatigue. Laboratory tests have indicated that soil's repeated loading will deform much more identical specimens subjected to sustained loads of equal magnitude. Field pit load and laboratory test indicates that the deformation under load varies directly with the logarithmic of load applications. This concept is used for design in variety of ways. So laboratory and field tests, just as plate load test, when road is there you have to do the plate load test. Different types of laboratory and load plate load test will give you the results, and you have different types of methods to design the pavement. Another concept to take into account is a repetition of load for design is to convert various loads to some constant equivalent wheel load. As we have seen earlier, in single wheel load, n number of loads are there, you have to convert into single wheel load. So equivalent wheel loads will be those which require identical thickness and quality of pavement, taking into account the repetitions of each load. So repetition of each load fatigue is calculated by Ny equal to Np 1 plus R n plus delay. Let us see quickly what they mean, where R is the traffic growth rate, N is the design life, Np is the present number of repetitions, Ny repetition of the end of life. Traffic through highway and airfield pavement. First, highway pavement. Although it is convenient to describe the design life of pavement in years, it is the total traffic loading during service that determines the actual design life of the pavement. Dear students, you have to consider the what will be the design life of the pavement with respect to when you are going to design any highway or rigid pavement, that this will have that much life, this will have that much life. It is thus more appropriate to associate the design life of the pavement with the total design traffic loading. The ultimate aim of traffic analysis for pavement design is to determine the magnitudes of wheel loads and number of times each of these loads will be applied on the pavement during its design life. For highway pavements, the computation of design traffic loading involves the following steps. Number 1, estimation of expected initial year traffic volume, estimation of expected annual traffic growth rate, estimation of traffic stream composition, computation of traffic loads, estimation of directional split of design traffic loads, estimation of design lane traffic loads. So first one, you have to calculate the initial year for traffic volume, which may be low, medium or high. And another is, second is expected annual traffic growth rate. What will be the rate which may grow years together, 7%, 8%, etc. Then third is traffic stream composition, which type of traffic is going to flow on your pavements. Then computation of traffic loads, all the traffic loads data, dual wheel, tandem wheels or multiple wheels. Then directional split of design traffic loads means if you are splitting the load into different parts, that this will be only for two-wheelers, this will be four-wheelers, this will be heavy traffic. So such type of splitting of traffic loads is there. And then design lane traffic loads, which lane is designed for different types of loading carriers. You can see this table number 1, vehicle classification by axle configuration. So there are near about 14 vehicle class. You have given the axle configuration, total number of axles in third row, number of single axles and number of tandem axles. This 2 and 2 means there are two wheels, single axles. From here to here, these are having 3 wheels. If you can see 1, 2, 3. These are having 1 and here are 2. So that's why 3 and 1 is here, that is single axle again. These are having 4 wheels, that means dual in tandem, 2 here and vice versa. So there are 6 wheels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are 4 axle wheels and tandems are there again. So these are how there are classification of axle configuration. Airfield pavements, the procedure of traffic loading analysis for airport pavements differs slightly from that for highway pavements due to differences in traffic operations and functional uses of the pavements. The basic steps are estimation of expected initial year traffic volume, expected annual growth rate, again same, but the total initial year traffic volume means how many aircrafts are going to land and take off and how many are planned in coming years. Same for annual traffic growth also. Then again for traffic stream composition, computation of traffic loading, again design traffic loading for different functional areas. Information concerning the first two steps is usually obtained from the planning forecast of the airport authority concerned. See, a typical diagram is given here. It is typical wheel configurations of main leg of aircraft landing gear. So if you can see the single wheel landing gear and this is dual in tandem landing gear. So this is nose wheels. These are landing gears. These are landing gears again. Single wheel, this is double wheel, this is dual in tandem, again this is nose wheel, again this is nose wheel, landing gear and landing gear. So the design wheel load is of the largest plane using the pavement. For design, the multiple wheel gear is converted into an equivalent single wheel load. In design, only the critical or heaviest design vehicle is considered. You can see there are n number of wheels, landing gears, nose gears, they are converted into single wheel load. For aircrafts, the wheel configurations may be arranged as given in figure A. And last is your airport traffic areas. You can see how it is given in the diagram. You can see the highway channel traffic occurs on taxiways, runways as well as turn-off areas from runways to taxiways or to the apron areas. You can see that this is runway, total runway interior and which is known as First foot, then these are your taxiways, this is apron where your aircrafts are landed. And next is that figure shows one such layout in this category. Areas are divided into A, B, C, D types depending on the intensity of loading. So these are the loading type A, type B, type C and type D. So A means 75 feet for 75 feet taxiways, B means 25 feet, C means 100 feet and D means beyond 100 feet. So this is how your airport traffic areas are given. So this is all for today, dear students. If you have any queries, kindly ask me in the chat box. Thank you so much for today. Thank you.